It's just like in a doctor's surgery. Well, doctor, I'm not feeling very well, but we will use the informal address, right? If you use the German formal address, I'll just get lost. So I'm very glad that you're here. And firstly, does everyone know the Jamel Rock Festival? No, who hasn't yet heard of it? Trousers down, folks. So you organize this festival that is basically on your doorstep as a fight back because it was an act of defense, right? How did you come to this? Yes, that's how you could put it. We moved into a very small village at the Baltic Sea coast in the northeastern German state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, and we did know at the time that there was one Nazi around who grew up there, and what we didn't know was what would happen once we moved there. We are large town people, big city people, and we wanted to have calm country life, kind of retire in the country. Well, we have the country, but the calm we didn't have because the Nazis started through funds of the NPD party, I think, in Germany, the neo-fascist party. And he started settling families there. So we have a democratic share of 95% confessing, people confessing to fascism and being quite open about this, and who try to shape the village this way. They decorate things. You may have seen the pictures in the media from signposts saying, pointing somewhere, and the devotionals. And from the first start, they have tried to hound away myself and my husband. And of course, their thinking is, if you're not my friend, you are my enemy, and you should be fought. This is what we've experienced for many, many years, and we said we are not going to take this quietly, and we have to get active and involve the population in what is happening here. The fact that we have a clear Nazi village in the region, that's not something for politics just to deal with, but every single citizen. So that's why we started public events on our farm, art exhibitions, garden exhibitions. And of course, since my husband is a musician, Horst, we started with a small festival once a year, and that was the Rock in Jamel. The Jamel rocks den Förster, and we have an anniversary this August of 15 years. And the idea behind it is not just to have fantastic people on stage, stars on stage, but to give people a chance to see what is happening, because there's a very depressing atmosphere. And if you haven't experienced this yourself, then you might think, okay, well, let them just hit Hitler around. It's a whole village. You won't really go through there. You won't see it. So what's the point? But that, of course, is an illusion. And with our event, we give people to get informed, get into communication. We have a large area with information where civil society initiatives, trade unions present themselves and have workshops, and there's a large social aspect. Right, extremism is part of the issues but there are other social issues that are talked about. If you look back to the history of that festival, how it came about, then, well, I'm not going to try and play it down, but it feels almost like there was a neighborhood argument that escalated somehow. You have these town people coming in. What do they want? We have to kind of draw them out. They don't belong, and then suddenly something like this happens. Well, yes, of course it is a neighborhood argument, because my neighbors sadly are of that kind, but, well, it's not what we wanted, but we are very isolated in this village, and we have actually been the victim of massive criminal activity. Yeah, your barn burned down, didn't it? And all kinds of other things that we heard about. It's a kind of siege situation, isn't it? When you say that 95% in that village are Nazis now. The festival has received a lot of attention. The whole country travels there. lots of activity. It's a clear sign against the political right. But on 364 days a year, there is no festival, and you are left alone with these people in the village. How does that work out? Well, it's a very different kind of life than we were used to. We've become very diligent, very, at least since the arson attack on our barn, we've become very aware. But it's a life not unlike the one we've had in Hamburg. We have all your neighbors you don't really are in contact with the neighbors in your house. This kind of tight network of social control in the country, that's not what we miss or that we wanted. So psychologically, we're not that badly suited to this isolated life coming from the big city. But what we keep experiencing from people in the region, people that don't acknowledge our activity, they perceive us as people that disturb things, to put the finger in the wound. And these people have not been able to resist anything of what was happening. So we don't have just friends in the region, a few isolated ones, many people that are jealous of us because we've received all kinds of awards. I'm allowed to speak here today. Some people don't like that and say that that's why we do it. We want the attention, and that led to massive limitations, restrictions on our festival through authority regulations, not things we know from other festivals, I have to say. So we are quite controversial. And yes, we are quite exposed, aren't you? So the question is, as you've said, you're putting the finger into the wound. You're making this problem visible that exists in a village like this. And there are villages in West Germany where Nazis have gained the upper hand and where democracy isn't that popular anymore. And you have to be sure what you say. But not every single village like this can afford a festival where musicians like Herbert Grönemeyer turn up. So what can these people do? What can these villages take away from your work? How can you help them? Well, using very concrete things, well, we did compile a checklist, what do you have to look out for. There is this checklist which we were happy to provide, but there's something that every person can do. We often hear, what you do is great, but I couldn't do it. You don't have to. You don't want everyone to stage a rock festival once a year. It's about being aware in everyday life, simply to be aware of this symbolicism that the right extreme and anti-Semitic and fascist people have. If you have a car with a certain number plate in front of you, that could be a Nazi. It's actually very likely then to be a Nazi if it's in my region. It might be very different in other places, but it's very good to be informed. How do you recognize people from these scenes? How do they talk? How do they get involved in whatever, the fire brigade, in parents' meetings? Because that is the entrance that Nazis use to present themselves as a responsible parent, a fire brigade volunteer. And when the trust I've built to the people around me has been built, then I'll out myself and ask these people whether they want to join me in a party assembly or something. So these are the strategies that are being used, and many people are very, very helpless. These number codes that the Nazis use on number plates or T-shirts. We see astonished faces when I talk about this. Nazis tend to recognize each other through various symbols, such as number codes.
Hand aufs Herz.
So it's really inspiring to see your struggle and how you deal with the situation and make something good out of it. But honestly, isn't there moments where you think, well, it's not worth the stress. I wanted to retire in the countryside, and I've become an expert involuntarily on right-wing extremism, and I'm dealing with these idiots every day. Aren't there moments where you and your husband think, wouldn't it be better to buy a house somewhere else? Well, of course, those moments exist, but they're very short because we bought this old forest house and it was just a dream come true for us. And this is not something we're ready to give up just like that. And if we were to sell it, we had to sell it to Nazis. And of course, they'd love to buy it from us. And this is not something we're going to do. So there's moments where we realize we can't guarantee we're going to spend the rest of our lives there, but it's very important to us to show our presence because we don't want them to win and to celebrate our moving out. I love that. Thank you.
Du bist ja Diplompädagogin.
So you're an educator, and you've dealt with also with adult education. Is this something that gave you inspiration for the struggle against the right? Of course. I've learned not only to analyze people, but also I've got strategies at hand to deal with difficult people. But it's a long time ago. I haven't been in this job for ages. I'm an author and a journalist, but still, it's it's good knowledge to have, and knowledge that you don't really lose. So, when's your festival going to take place? Yeah, I can finally announce it, because it's been a secret before. It's going to be at the 12th and 13th of August, and on 10th of July you can buy tickets. So reserve your ticket and have a chance to be there. I can only recommend you all to try for a ticket. Birgit, thank you so much for being here. You're an absolute hero for me. I admire your work. I wish you lots of success with that in the future. Thank you.